Parenting is hard. It can also be rewarding, but getting through the grind to the good stuff can be a real struggle. And all of us could use some inspiration, encouragement, or just a reminder that we aren't alone on this journey. Sometimes even parents need a timeout.
Hey, welcome. This is the time in the week where we put the kids to bed. We take a big deep breath. We find a comfy chair and we gather together for some adult conversation. It's Parents Time Out. And I'm so happy to be here with my friend, Beth Guckenberger. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me. It's fun to have adult conversation at this hour.
It is fun. It is fun. And the reason Beth says it's fun to have adult conversation is because Beth has 11 kids. And so she has a lot of non-adult conversation. Beth is a mom. She's a grandma. She's co-founder of Back2Back Ministries. And Back2Back cares for orphans literally across the world. And so we're just really happy she's here. And if you're tuning in, let us know you're here by saying where you're from. And Beth, as we wait for people to get on, I'm going to ask you a question, okay?
You can ask me anything you want.
Okay. So as people are telling us where they're from, I want to know, your family plays tons of games. I know that because I hear you talk about it. I see it on social media. So we are home with our families a lot right now. What are 2 games that you would recommend that we play with our families?
Oh, well, some of my kids are older, so we taught them euchre, which is like, it's because at some point we actually want to play a game that we as adults would like to play. And
Sure.
I've played so many games of euchre recently that I told my husband it's finally kind of fun to beat them. Like as a parent, you kind of pity play sometimes so that they feel good about themselves and they understand the thrill of victory. But I now have played enough that I'm kind of delighted when we crush them. We also play a lot of outdoor games. So I would say we've been playing a lot of spike ball lately. If you're familiar with spike ball, it's like a game with a net and kind of like volleyball on the ground, but it gets you moving. We're all sitting in front of our screens a lot during the day, so it's kind of fun after dinner to go outside and have some spike ball tournaments.
I've never played spike ball, but somebody told me about it, and it sounds really fun. Hey,
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question about this, because you mentioned that at a certain point, you could start beating your kids and how much fun it was to beat your kids in games. At what age do you think you can start beating your kids at games?
My husband and I have very different opinions. I mean, he was beating our 3-year-olds in chutes and ladders, and I was pretty sure we were, he comes, we had different childhood backgrounds, but I think right when they start to learn how to trash talk, so depending on your child's temperament, that can be somewhere around 8, 9, 10. That's when I think it's kind of fun to just continue to remind them that you are the adult in the room.
It's good. So when they start trash talking, we can bring it on.
That's So your kid, you might have a 4-year-old trash talker. I don't know, but that's about usually my indication. It's time for them to understand there's 2 sides.
That's good. So, hey, Beth, for those of us who don't, or those who are listening who don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah. Well, we lived in Mexico for a little over 15 years. My husband and I were missionaries there. We worked with orphaned and vulnerable children. And that's when our family size began to grow. I have several biological children. We have 4 adopted children. And then we were foster parents for teenage girls for a long time, like almost a decade. So we have some of those guys who aged out of foster care in our family unit, and we consider them as part of our family. Really, they're kind of I can divide them into those categories, but if you interacted with any of them, you wouldn't know really, other than the fact they're different colors, who's joined our family recently and who's been around since the very beginning.
Cool. Well, we invited you here tonight because I've heard you talk so many times about just building empathy in our kids for people who are different than them, just for people who, for all kinds of different people. And Originally, it was because we're getting ready to do Go Local this weekend, which is a project where we go out and we do for people all over the city. So I thought, oh, this will be great. Let's get Beth here. So then people will go out and have their kids do a project. And then the more we talked, what I realized is I was focusing on the behavior that I wanted. But really, tonight, what we want to talk about is how do we really build kids who care, who, because of who they are, naturally go out and serve.
Yeah.
And so if parents, if you're watching, you have any questions, go ahead and ask those questions now. But we just wanted to start with one. When we talk about serving, I mean, a lot of times it feels like it takes money to serve others. And especially now, some people are without jobs or they're making less than they usually do. How do we serve others if we're financially strapped?
Yeah, I can remember before I had any kids, I was hosting a teenage mission trip in Mexico. And for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to make them their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So I was standing at this kitchen island. There were like 20 high school kids around me, and they were giving me their peanut butter and jelly special orders. So they were saying like, hey, I don't do crunchy peanut butter, and I don't like chunks in my fruit, and I don't do wheat bread, and I don't, they're giving me all their. And I was sitting there thinking the way we think before we have kids, like when I have kids, they're going to eat any kind of peanut butter and jelly that anybody ever offers them. They're not going to be so picky. And so I began to have a family the next year, and poor things. One week I would buy wheat bread, one week I'd buy white bread, one week I'd buy creamy peanut butter, one week I'd buy crunchy peanut butter. I knew kind of where I wanted to end up. And so I reverse engineered my choices in order to get there, because I knew eventually I wanted them to go to anybody's house and eat like apricot jelly if they were given it, or, organic peanut butter. And so still to this day, I do that kind of thing because I want them to not be picky eaters. In the same way, when you think about having kids that are others-centered or that are missionally focused or that are empathetic or outward focused or even just simply caring, if you know that's where you want to end up, we have to start reverse engineering those choices at an early age to make sure we set them up for that kind of outcome. Because I don't know about you, but I think to myself, like, if I give my kids like all the right shoes and all the right practice and all the right opportunities and all the right vacation and all the right, classes and all the right clothes and all the right everything, there's no way at 18 years old I'm going to pop them out of my house and say, I hope you're an other-centered, outward-focused, empathetic and caring adult. Like, I've just spent 18 years telling them it's all about them and everything that they needed. So there's some thinking that we have to do as parents about, and I'm a big believer that although I think family devotionals are awesome, most of those kind of messages gets transmitted in pretty everyday, mundane moments on your way to the grocery store and on a walk around the neighborhood.
Right. I agree. I absolutely agree. Okay. What if, a lot of our kids are self-centered, and when they're little, that's kind of developmentally, they're self-centered, but then sometimes we have 16 and 17-year-olds that are self-centered. How do we help them be less self-centered?
Yeah, we built a house in a neighborhood that was undeveloped before we built the house here. And we didn't have stop signs or stop lights or anything up here on this hill for a long time. Then eventually we've had more construction, and they put a stop sign in front of my house last year. And I didn't even, the day they put it in, I stopped at the stop sign, like sometime earlier in that day. But later that night, I was with my son in the car. We were coming home from soccer, and I had the radio on, and I was on the phone, and I was giving him instructions about to take a shower when we got home and all the things we were doing. And I just blew through the stop sign. I didn't even notice it. And I could kind of hear somebody yelling at me, but I was doing all those things. And I looked over at Tyler and I said, was somebody just yelling at me? And they said, he's like, yeah, I think so. So I'm like, go in the house. And I go outside, and I said to my neighbor who's out in our yard, did you just yell at me? She's like, oh no, that's that new guy over here. He just moved, and he's been out here all day, and he was yelling at you to stop. I think you upset him. He went in his house. So I go inside of my house, and first of all, I say to my kids, like, please remind me every time we come down the street to stop at the stop sign, because I just upset my neighbor. What do you think I should go do? And, these are kids who have access to, TikTok and YouTube, and they had all kinds of creative things I could do to my neighbor for yelling at me. But I said to them something that really is the crux of what we get to do as parents. I said, you know what? I think that we're supposed to look like God in every area of our life. So I don't really know what that looks like, but I know that my response to him needs to look as if God was responding to him. So I can't do all the things I'm thinking about. So anyway, I didn't know what to do. The next morning I woke up and I'm like, I make a really good chocolate chip cookie. And so I'm going to make this guy some cookies. So I made all these cookies. Then with my kids, I printed off these stop signs on Pinterest and I cut them out and I stuck them on all the cookies. And I knocked on his door. And all I had planned to say was, hey, you probably don't recognize me because I went flying by you last night. But my name's Beth and I live over there in that house. And I'm sorry I upset you. And I told the kids, all I'm going to do is make room for God. Like whatever happens after that, I don't have any control over it. I don't really have an agenda. I don't even really care what happens. I just want to make room in a moment for God to do whatever it is he wants to do. And I think that's really one thing we get to do as parents. Like, again, you're at the grocery store, you're at a soccer game, you're at, you have a moment with your neighbor. Just like, how can we invite God into that moment and then let him do whatever he's going to do? It's not up to us to fix things.
Right. And I think so often we try to write the whole story. It's like, okay, I'm going to take him the chocolate chip cookies. This is what my apology is going to be. He's probably going to respond to me this way. So then I'm going to say this to him. And then on Friday, we'll have beers on our back deck. Mm-hmm. And that's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like modeling for my kids, like if he responds awesome, it's not because my cookies are extra good. It's because God did something. If he responds awful, it's not because, I'm not responsible for his reaction. I'm just responsible for my reaction. And so like talking to the kids about, how can we have God's eyes for the things that are going on around us? What would it feel like to be someone in that particular storyline? What would it feel like, fill in the blank, and then just have that kind of empathetic moment with them where you teach how to exercise that muscle, and what comes out of that, again, that's just gravy. I mean, that's just icing. What we get to do as parents is teach them how to use that muscle, because in the absence of empathy, we end up going to judgment, and that's
right. And you've written a bunch of books on for kids where you can read about different kids and what their life situations are. And what are the names of the books?
They all start with the word tales. So it's like
That's
tales
right.
of the not forgotten, tales of the defended ones, tales of the ones you let out. They're true stories. Again, that same idea, just like, are we populating our kids' lives with stories about people whose lives are really different than theirs, so that they can just use their imagination and think like, what would it be like? And then the solutions kids come up with are awesome. Like there's this boy, he was 10, and I was having a conversation with a large group of people about whatever it is that we have in our hands. Just ask God how we can use it. Like we don't have to go try to get other things, just whatever God's given us, we should give it away. And this boy was trying to get out of the room, and he's like, I don't really have anything, and I'm not really good at anything. Can I go? I'm like, oh, come on, you're good at something. And he's like, no, I'm not really good at anything. And I'm like, well, come on, what do you do all day? And he goes, Xbox. Like, I'm good at Xbox. I'm like, okay, well, ask God what he can do with your Xbox. He sat there the rest of that meeting. A couple weeks later, he sent a check to the office, to the Back2Back office, for $410. It was a cashier's check. He had gone back to his elementary and organized this Xbox tournament with a $10 entry fee, and he had 41 participants. And he got like some local businesses to donate prizes. And he just wrote me this like simple little note that, look what God did with my Xbox. And I think that like that's like simply saying to kids, what do you have and how can you give it away? They come up with the ideas. They're way more creative than the adults are in their lives, because they have no limits. They don't self-edit in the way that we as adults do.
That's right. That's right. As you know, our youngest daughter was adopted when she was 10. And after she came home, she wanted to bring the kids here for the summer. And I kept saying, oh, no. You can't do that. No. And so she finally decided she wanted to send socks and toothpaste to the kids. And so we did that. So it was her idea, which that's great. And we did that. And she kept talking about the summer. And finally, Mark and I are going, maybe that's a word from the Lord and that's a vision. And sure enough, she brought a bunch of friends of hers from Eastern Europe here for the summer who ended up getting adopted. And I think as parents, though, we don't recognize the things that their ideas seem too complicated or too hard, or we think, well, they don't really know how difficult this would be to execute, but they can lead us.
Yeah, and I think modeling, like for kids, how to follow a prompt, like Kimmy, you and I were having a conversation earlier. You felt prompted to text someone and encourage them. Like when we have those moments to like say those out loud to the kids, like, hey, you know what I was thinking about someone today? And so I just called them and this is what happened. Because those same things are going to happen to kids, and they need to have that modeling that sometimes it goes exactly the way you want to, sometimes it doesn't. But we just what we want to do is be available, faithful, obedient. And if you're feeling prompted to stop on your family walk around the neighborhood and talk to someone who's sitting on their driveway, do it. And then tell them afterwards, I was kind of nervous about it because I wasn't sure how friendly they'd be. But I think kids need to see in real time the hurdles you have to kind of get over to continue to be open and available.
That's good. So really we're sharing our discomfort with them. I think often we want to make them think that everything's uncomfortable, but actually let them know I felt awkward and weird and I didn't want to do it. And I did it. That's good. If anybody that's listening in has questions, you can go ahead and type them in the comments below and we'll get to those. And one of them is, Beth, with younger kids, toddlers and preschoolers, it's hard to give them opportunities to serve others and do for others. What are some recommendations for little kids to really start them caring?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think you can do things like identify needs in the people that are in their life. Like, do you think that even if it's people that they love, like, do you think grandma would like that? Let's start thinking with a generosity mindset, with an abundance mindset. What do you have that you can give away? What do you have that you can share? I don't ever think it's too early to expose them to true stories about people. So videos and books are a great way to give them the perspective of people's lives that are different than theirs, and that they might, have real-time prayer for after they finish watching something or reading something. I think notes of encouragement, them drawing pictures for people. Again, all you're doing is practicing that muscle of what talent do you have? What can you offer up? If you have art skills, do art skills. If you want to sing a song for someone, watch them bring joy into someone else's life. I think having them help you cook and then give away what you make. I think there's a lot of ways that you can start helping them see that they have something to offer. Because what happens to adults is they think, I don't have anything to offer, and I definitely don't have anything in common with fill in the blank. So if we can teach kids at an early age, you have something to offer and you have something in common with whoever it is that you're feeling a nudge towards or encouragement towards, then you're off to the ball game, because you'll get to kind of wire those muscles in the right direction from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. What about, you talked about people who are different than them. What if I feel with us, we live in a very homogeneous neighborhood. How do you intentionally give your kids opportunities to be around people who are different than them?
I mean, I think it starts with the adults. Like, as parents, we need to be looking at our phones and see, like, who do we talk to throughout the day? Like, who do we invite into our houses? Who do we, what kinds of shows are we watching? What kinds of neighbors are we waving to? I think those, like, doing that, some of that self-assessment. And if you're uncomfortable with the answers to those questions, putting on display for your kids where those common grounds are, where those common bridges are, and where you're willing to go out of your comfort zone to do something that is going to grow you up or going to form a relationship. I'm always telling kids, like my kids, I'm saying, it's so fun to me when God brings me a friend twice my age or half my age, or that looks nothing like me, or that's the richness, the texture of life, but of God's family. And we get the privilege of engaging with a family of that size.
What do you think is, because you obviously have raised kids who care, I mean, I know your daughter, well, a lot of your kids, they do mission work, and not just with Back2Back, but with other organizations too. What do you think are the key ingredients?
I think working with teenagers before I had teenagers, I would sometimes get my heart broken when teenagers would say, I don't know if this faith thing's for me because I've got questions. And every adult I know who's in the faith, they look like they have it all figured out. So if I have questions, I must not have faith. So I'm always telling my kids, God loves a good question asker. Like, you can't scare him with, or like we adopted a child that has been difficult. And everything in me wants to kind of pretend in front of the rest of the kids because I'd really like them really to pretend. That would make me feel better too, that it's easy. But I'm trying to be as authentic as possible with them when there's a hard moment for them to see me go, you know what, I'm all out. And there's no more Diet Coke to make me feel better. So here's the deal. Like, God will give us what we need in this moment. And then to kind of joining in that authentic expression of faith, I think gives them courage to take their questions, their faith out into a world that's beyond their own control, beyond their control.
Well, talking about having a child who's difficult, anybody who has more than one kid has had a time in their life when one of the kids is more difficult than the other. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with sibling rivalry with that? And what do you do to keep the kids from being mad at each other?
Yeah, I always tell them we're not going to treat people outside of this house better than we treat people inside this house. So you're not going to be unkind to your sibling and then go out and spend time outside the neighborhood with your friend. Like, we're going to understand that we're going to make things right in this house before we go out of it. So sometimes I think they team up with each other and look like they've reconciled because they don't really want me to talk to them anymore. Like, hey, come on, let's like make up in front of mom so we can be done with it. But which has its own form of bonding. I don't care. I think there's a level of respect we have as parents to teach kids to have for those that are most important to them, because they're practicing with their siblings the kinds of patterns they're going to have in relationships the rest of their life with their spouse, with their own children, ongoing with those same siblings. So making sure that they put on display things like honor and, you know, like course correcting in real time. Plus, like, so I was having a hard moment with one of our teenage sons about a month ago. And I called a friend of mine who's like an expert in the things that he deals with. And I was really like, hey, you have like 30 seconds to keep me from killing him. So like, give me a magic bullet right now. Like this was like real time. This is a real time COVID-19 story. Uh-huh. And instead of her giving me like a silver bullet, she's like, hey, take a deep breath, close your eyes, go find yourself a quiet place, like get yourself together. Inside of you, what God can give you is more than enough than what you need for that. And I realized like the same things happen to our kids. They get emotionally they start to spiral out of control. And a sibling is the easiest nearby target. So for me, I have to demonstrate to my kids, hey, Mama is getting out of control. I'm having some big feelings right now. And I'm going to show you what you do when you get big feelings. I'm not going to squash you because I can, because I'm your parent and you're my kid. Like I'm actually going to go get myself under control. So I'll be back in a few minutes and we'll pick up where we left off, but hopefully I'll be in a much better place. And just trying to model that for them so that they learn how to, take their own temperature, read their own engine, time themselves out when they need to.
Well, that's a very wise. That's a very wise friend who told you that, though, because so often we just want to fix the kid. We just want the kid to be compliant and respectful and do what we say. When really, like when you're talking about fixing the kid, what we really want is we want to build character into them, and we want them to be everything that God created them to be. And really the best way to do that is for us to respond in healthy, calm ways.
Yes. And I think, again, back to that empathy, you lose your patience with someone less the more that you understand them. So at my dinner table every night, we ask 2 questions that every child has to answer. They don't actually have an option. They have to answer these questions. And the two questions are, what was your happy today? And what was your crappy today? And the reason I want them to tell they're happy is because I want us to get in the habit of celebrating good news that's not ours, that has nothing to do with me. I am actually joyful for you because something good happened to you and I love you. Like that's really important to me. But I also want them to practice sharing their crappies with each other because I want them, again, to feel empathy. Like maybe that doesn't sound that hard to me, what was crappy to you, but if it's crappy to you, I want to feel something for you. I want to learn what it looks like to share your burden, and better yet, to ask you later about how that math test went, or how that breakup went, or how that ball game went. And I think that intentional relationship cultivation between siblings reduces sibling rivalry, because suddenly they don't just tolerate each other, they actually know one another. And the more we know each other, the more grace we give.
Right. Happy crappy. That is I love that so much better than high low. We're adopting that for sure. Happy crappy. And I think a good thing in that too, when they're sharing their crappy, they're learning how to be vulnerable, and that it's okay to say something that maybe they failed at that day, or something really hurtful that happened to them, and have people around the table go, yeah, and we're all still good. We're still with you. And because sometimes vulnerability isn't celebrated.
No. And you have to, again, sometimes depending on the temperament of your child. So like one of my kids came home from work today. I'm like, how was work? Oh, it's fine. But then tonight at dinner, when it was time to share the happy crappy, they shared something at work that happened that was crappy. I'm not sure if we hadn't made space for it, if we would have heard what had happened at work, which was not like astronomical, but I know now tomorrow what to ask about. And I know certainly how to pray for them. And I know that other siblings are going to be sensitive to that subject when it comes up again. So like, there's just a lot of wins. There's a lot of wins to cultivating dinner time conversation.
Yeah. Happy crappy. It's going to be a Bado tradition now, taking the place of high-low. Gosh, so our time's almost up, Beth. Thank you so much. And as we close, what final words do you have for us?
I think as I was thinking about the deal about parenting, first of all, I just want every parent to like hear me say, like, you're killing it. Like the fact that you're even tuning into this show to get more encouragement or insight or things to think about, it means you're killing it. Like I just want everyone to hear me say it's like worth the work. It's worth what it requires of you as a parent. And the more work, especially those of you with younger kids, really the more work you put into the early ages, the easier the older ages are. And so it's worth it. Little people are worth it. And I'm glad that you're in the story that you're in, investing in the kids that God's given you.
That's good. It is worth it. And some days it doesn't feel like it is.
No, some days it is totally worth it.
Right. It is worth it. And our thing, how about if we encourage people to try happy crappy, or if they don't say crap at their house, they can do high low at dinner.
Whatever makes them feel comfortable. In my household, we're certainly very used now to the phrase happy and crappy, but when we have a grandparent over or when somebody's inviting a friend over, there are always some like little giggles when we find ourselves, people find themselves saying that word at the dinner table in front of us. But I mean, crappy things are crappy. To pretend they're not crappy doesn't even make sense. Like,
no. And, we used to, when my kids were little, we played high-low all the time. And when I would pick them up from school, they'd get in the car and go high-low. And there was a little boy that sometimes would ride home with us, and he would always roll his eyes when I would do it. Go, oh, and then he'd tell me. And then I later found out that they started doing that at their house when, his mom would pick him up from school. He actually liked having the opportunity to share what was low in his life. So, yeah, try that out, parents.
Beth,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a child that skipped dinner tonight because he was at Chipotle with his friends, and he texted me, hey, can I go to Chipotle with my friends? And I said, yes, you can. And then he texted me his happy and crappy, because I think he just knew, like, I just need to check in. I need to make sure. So I don't know if he knew I was going to read them a lot at the dinner table, but he just was like, this is weird not to do this. So let me just tell you my happy and crappy, which I was like, this does not get you out of conversation later when you come home, but I'm glad to know.
That's right. That's right. Well, parents, if you're watching, if you want to hear more about Beth, I guess Back2Back, that's the best place to find it. We'll put it down in the notes. And then also there's back2back.org/story
hour.
Story hour. Yeah. That has a great story and activity that you can do with your kids to help, as Beth was talking about, just help them better understand maybe somebody who lives in a different situation than they do. So
It's a story about a little boy in Haiti. Yeah. That's a good story.
And then also, we didn't even mention Trauma Free World. It's a new organization that Back2Back just started. It's traumafreeworld.org. And you can get on that, and there's all kinds of opportunities for training and information about trauma. And it's an awesome, I mean, it's only like what, a month old, the website? Yeah, it's brand new. It's a baby, but it doesn't look like a baby. It looks well established. So, Beth, thank you so much. I always love spending time with you. Really appreciate your time tonight. And parents, next week, we're going to have Hannah Faye on, who is a friend of Beth's.
She's a great friend of mine. Yeah. Enjoy your time with her next week.
She's a family therapist. And in the midst of COVID, there's a lot of kids who are experiencing grief and loss. So she's going to be talking to us as parents about how we help our kids just process through that. So, Beth, thanks for being with us. Will you bless our parents as we leave?
Yes, I will. And I've been praying this verse over my family, so I'll do it over you all.
Okay.
Isaiah 43, it says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. And just may all of you understand in the very innermost part of your heart that God is with you through every story and every circumstance and every moment throughout your whole day. So blessings.
Thank you, Beth. Bye, parents.